Engage fluo injectors.
Engaging fluo injectors.
Fluo reactors at 80%, sir.
Fluo containment field is destabilizing.
Emergency fluo containment protocols now. All hands brace for impact.
Brace for impact in 3, 2, 1.
Holy shit, we're back with another episode of Roll 1-1 Podcast. Before we dive into all the good stuff, quick tease for the third half of the show. Make sure you stick around because we're going to be talking about the future of the Game Awards, what they've done right, what should change, and a lot of speculative and contemplative looking at the Game Awards, past, present, and future. So stick around for that. That's after the break in the third half. You can and should subscribe and share so that way you get all of our awesome stuff in your feed on a regular basis for free. And, you know, don't miss anything that'll get your brain box spinning. Also, we want to hear what you think. Join the conversation. Hit the link in the show notes there and jump into the Discord and come chat with us. We want to hear from you, hear what you think about this week's topic, a past episode, future ideas, all of it. Bring it. Let's go. Shout out to our awesome sponsor, Imaginary Authors, helping you up your scent game with fragrances for guys, gals, and non-binary pals. More about them just before the break. Everything out of the way.
Choose your fighter.
I am, as always, your host, Roll to the Wall. Joining me this week are my friends, including Kathy.
Hello.
And Josh the LeGroux.
Yo.
I'm pointing at directions in my screen, but I have no idea how Skype is going to fucking arrange this in the recording, so fuck it, whatever.
I
For
just
all
see
I know,
fingers
it's there,
going.
there, and yeah. So, all right, let's get to...
Oh my gosh!
Video games.
Because I haven't talked to you in the fucking goddamn longest time. Kathy, what in the hell have you been playing?
Actually, not much. I've been kind of not feeling well, so my health has been kind of down the drain, but...
You've been
in
playing
those
Crazy
days-
Taxi, right?
Huh?
You've been playing Crazy Taxi, IRL, right?
Yes. Stomping on that emergency brake that I don't
the
have.
imaginary one
It's
in the
okay.
passenger seat, yeah.
For context, I have a son that is learning how to drive, so thoughts, prayers, whatever good vibes, spells, whatever you want to send my way, please do. He's doing really great. Let's just keep it going. So, but I did start playing. I was going through like the online library on the Switch for all the different, NES, Super Nintendo, all that stuff.
Yeah.
And I decided to jump into the Sega Genesis games. And I found a game that I had actually watched a video on that was talking about just obscure, rare games on the Genesis. And it mentioned that it was Zelda-like, so I thought I'd give it a try, and that was Crusaders of
is it
Sensi.
Oh, not what I was thinking.
Yeah, okay.
I was thinking Beyond Oasis would have been up your alley.
I have played that one, but that was a while ago.
Okay.
I didn't care for that one as much, but this one I actually liked. First of all, it was easy. I feel the gameplay's very easy. The puzzles are easy. It's in my wheelhouse of, me playing on easy mode, story mode, whenever I play the big games. But no, it was fun, and I could see, and like I said, the creator or the person in the video was talking about how it was Zelda-like, and I could see where it got its Zelda influences, and knowing a while back we had talked about what makes a Zelda-like game, I could see where this one would have been a good comparison. I wish I had played it before we talked about it. So I can see where...
Just retroactively add it to the stack.
God,
Yeah.
she pulls that topic out from a coon's age, like way back.
But, so I was playing through it. I didn't get all the way through. I think maybe I got, 1/3 of the way through, and then I just stopped playing again. And
It's okay.
But yeah, no, it's fun. I'm hoping to get back into it. But I do have a lot of games on my to-play list. So many games.
It's okay because nobody really cares about Sega games in, any kind of real-life situation, so you're all good.
Well, I wish I had a
Don't
Sega
you shit on
Genesis.
Vector Man. Vector Man was the tit.
Hey, I have
Listen,
that physically, so...
I loved the Sega Genesis. I wish I had had one.
Yeah.
My cousin had it, and so anytime we went over to his house for holidays, I loved playing it, and I always wanted one, and I never got one. So that
I
might
think
have...
it's funny. I think it's funny, just real quick. I think it's funny when we were kids, there was always those people. They had Sega, not Nintendo, and there was Nintendo, mainly Nintendo people. But every, you had a kid that had the TurboGrafx, and you had a kid that had the Sega Genesis, and like I knew one person that had a Neo Geo.
Yeah.
And like that was like. It was like going to like another world when you went into their house, and I thought that was awesome.
It was, and it was even nice when people like other families had, even if they had the Nintendo like us, they always had different games.
Yes.
Than we did, and so
The Sega kids were the sports kids.
A lot of them, yep.
Most of them, that and the
Sonic
fighting
kids. The Sonic kids. Those kids were weird.
Oh, I love the Sonic game. So that was
They're all
No, the
furries
games are
now.
good, but those kids were weird. No.
That's why. It's because they all grew up to be furries. I'm not knocking. If that's your
I'm
thing,
not
go
knocking
for
it
it.
either.
Not
Hey,
hurting
Yeah,
anybody.
that
I'm not
explains-
either.
But,
I mean, do what you want to do, but
stereotype furries.
I do agree with that, though.
Well, when
They
I got
all
a
are.
little bit, but when I got a little bit older, it ended up that my brother was the weird one because my brother, once he got his Sega Genesis, that was it. He started buying every single console he could get his hands on. My brother had everything. If you wanted to play it, he had it. And even some of the more obscure ones, especially as he got older and was making money, he had every single console. So
That's kind of how I became in my 30s.
Well, we're starting to get all our stuff back. But, yeah, like I said, I got tons of games. We got Eternal Darkness. My husband found the copy of the game, so I've got to play that, although our TV is broken downstairs, so we got to
You need to play that. And
do.
remember, and when you play that, just remember the time it came out in.
Oh, my God.
You have to mentally move yourself back a couple decades.
I do.
You do.
Because, my God, I was in grad school when I first saw that game, and that was when I got the game. And I remember the first experience with it, the guy who was playing it had surround sound. And one of the speakers was right next to me, and all of a sudden I heard whispering, and I freaked. I was like, what the hell?
I remember the first time I freaked out. I don't know if a spoiler, kind of. Just so if you...
Late spoiler, everybody!
Yeah. But when like they do the blue screen...
Oh my God!
And I shut off my GameCube. I remember shutting it off.
Because you thought, yeah.
Yeah, I thought, holy shit, shut it off, and then it won't save.
There were just so many cool... That was such a concept that I wish... Oh my God, that game was such a cool concept. And it was a fun game to play.
Yeah.
But
I feel like that's one of those that you couldn't replicate that kind of experience in present day anymore. Because it was so dependent on exactly where technology was at the time.
You know, like almost like I want to think about Kojima a little bit because he had this idea of like a game like texting your cell phone and like doing stuff like that with your cell phone. And I think if like a game today did that, it would be that kind of experience.
Yeah.
Where it's like, oh, I just got a message on my phone, so I'm just going to look at this while I'm playing the game. And then it's from the game, but you don't really know it.
Yeah.
You know, that would be the modern day equivalent of that, I think.
I think so, yeah.
I almost feel like maybe the modern equivalent is going the opposite direction, whereas Eternal Darkness kind of went deeper and deeper into the mindfuckery by going into the technology.
Yeah.
The modern equivalent is going the opposite way and pulling it out into the real world, a la Inscription and the other games that are linked together in that loop.
Yeah, like really, like you're right though, where it kind of like pulled it like existentially kind of out.
It keeps expanding the magic circle.
Yeah. And today, like you would want to go in. You know. Okay. Yeah, I get it.
So anyhow, that was my game of the week.
There's a whole weird mini like down the warp pipe right there.
Yep.
So, Josh, what you been spinning, Holmes?
I'm just gonna say nothing, and it's been sad. This was the week I had to work all 6 days. So Saturday to Saturday I work. So I'm sorry, Monday through Saturday I had to work all 6 days. When I got home, I did not feel like doing anything, and this room is a mess, as you can kind of see from the background. I don't have the excuse anymore of like, oh, the hurricane destroyed my house, because yeah, it did, but I've got everything back. Now the excuse is more like, I can't fit all my crap back in this room, and I have it all in here. And so I'm thinking to myself, okay, how do I get rid of like half of these bins? And
You
like
just send them to my house.
yeah, but like Mel is, yeah, I should actually, but Mel is saying like, she's like,
Just put them
You've
on
got-
the plane with you when you come next month.
I'm going to tell you something. I've got like 17 to 20 more bins sitting in the garage still
Oh dang.
that were in this room before.
Jeez. It's not
But
smaller, is it?
No, but part of it is like I got these shelves now, these black shelves. I'm actually displaying stuff now.
Oh.
Like
okay.
I told Mel, I said a lot of
spread out.
exactly. So I told Mel, and then like the closet is not like the pack space it was, because the closet back there I have shelves in,
Okay.
and so I
For
only
display,
fit about
yeah.
I only fit about 1/3, and my TV's in front of it, and then my Xbox and all that stuff is over there,
Right.
and then over here, which you can't see, I've got all my Nintendo stuff, and then I have 4 more shelves of just, and I know you can see some of them maybe at the end towards the room, but of just games.
Dang. You
And
need like a whole basement.
I do. And so like I have been like secretly like planning like another room somewhere, and it may require like an addition to the house or moving, but that's just not in the cards yet. So
Say, do you have a way you could just expand the current room?
no. I mean, I did. Okay, so here's the whole problem. Like after the hurricane, when the house was destroyed and was totally cleaned out, we could put everything back the way it was and not get any kind of permits or any kind of tax, problems with
Right.
it. But if we changed the rooms, we had to get the permits, and then they'd come back out and they would reassess us for taxes. So to keep life livable,
Yeah.
we just made it the way it was. You know,
Makes sense.
Right.
with small changes, like the bathroom now doesn't have a tub, it has just a shower and that kind of stuff. So like that stuff we could do, but we couldn't like expect, because I wanted to expand the bathroom out because my master bedroom's like twice the size it needs to be, and I thought, well, I'll just make the bathroom bigger. And they're like, well, we can do that, but then we got to go get a permit. We got to do this and this, and it's going to cost you like another $1,000 a year. And I'm like, no,
Jeez.
no, not doing that.
Welcome to this week. Welcome to this old podcast with your host Josh Vila.
Yeah, it's exactly what it is, America, right? Late stage capitalism at its finest. So that's just what it was, and I just said, nope, make it the way it was, and we'll deal with it. So there's a lot of things happening behind the scenes too that we're kind of jiggering around. So that's for another time, but on a podcast. But I haven't been playing much. That's the idea. So go ahead, Raul.
Let's see. This week has just been plucking more at Prince of Persia: Lost Crown. And I will speak for somebody that's not here slightly. I know that Michael's been playing it too. We actually kind of just accidentally synced up at one point. We both hit the Forest Queen at the same time. That's just where I'm still sitting. I do like Michael's headcanon theory, though, that the Forest Queen from the Lost Crown is also the same, like the actual same universe character of the end boss from Hob. And it totally fucking works. Like, yep, nope, I accept this as headcanon. Done. That said, I don't know what my fucking problem is, but I'm having a bitch of a time with the Forest Queen, and I shouldn't, because the Forest Queen fight is honestly a lot like one of my favorite boss fights from Hollow Knight, which is the Mantis Lords. It's got a dancing rhythm to it. I just, for some reason, I'm not fucking hitting it, and I don't know what it is and what my problem is. So I actually backed off that fight and went wandering around elsewhere just to go kind of, push out the bounds of the map. And I may actually leave the Forest Queen until last and go to the archives to go find the other power that you need to get into the sand pit to get into the end game. But I know last time I talked about this, I said that I hadn't run into like any of the bugs and glitches that I was hitting when I started this. Some of them have started popping back up, and I actually got like some screen grabs and video clips of it. There was one, I shit you not, where I jumped up, did a downward thrust attack, and my character got stuck in the downward thrust like animation, landed on the ground, and was just floating side to side in that animation frame, and it looked ridiculous. I was like, what the fuck? Couldn't do it. I'm like, ended up having to reboot the game to get it out of it, but it's minimal, at least in terms of frequency that it's popped back up. But a little bit of that has been cropping back up again. I'm like, that's a shame. I thought we were fucking done with this, but apparently not. I realized too, part of what's been bugging me about this game, because it's a pretty well put together game. It is, but it's not perfect. And I remember when it came out, there was a lot of comparisons between, which is the better Metroidvania, Dread or Prince of Persia, because they weren't that far apart.
Right.
They weren't. And here's the thing. And I even saw a few outlets give it to Prince of Persia. And if I ever go back and find which outlets those were, if I decide that I care enough, I'm going to write them and tell them that they are just factually fucking incorrect. Because here's the problem. It's a great game. It's well put together. What I couldn't put my thumb on is this game has the feel of being crafted by a team that loves what they're doing, that are passionate about it, but didn't get the support that they needed to fully realize and polish the vision to a beautiful shine that they wanted it to be. Like, you could tell that they were hamstrung by a lack of support and resources, and so the end product was, this is the best we could do. And you can tell that they cared and they wanted it to be more, but didn't have a way to get it there, because it wasn't the publisher didn't have the faith in them that they had in themselves to realize the vision that was in their head. And so you cannot stack the two next to each other and objectively look at it and say Prince of Persia was the better game. It's just not. And it's almost a tragedy, because it could have been, I won't say it should have been, but it could have been neck and neck with Dread if it had gotten the polish that it needed. Iron out the bugs and the wrinkles, put a little more polish to the animation and the visuals, and you could have at least been on par. And it didn't get there. And it took me the last couple weeks of playing off and on to finally see it and go, that's what the fuck it is. But now that I've seen it, I can't unsee it. And I'm not mad about it, but it doesn't bug me anymore, because I'm not sitting here trying to figure out, why is this bothering me? What is it here that's not quite right? And now it's in front of me. We're good. Mystery solved. Now I can just fucking enjoy the rest of the game for what it is. So, but I've been trying to dissect and analyze that for at least a week. So
okay.
there's some food for thought for you, which is not to say you shouldn't play it. If you want to play a really well done, what should have been a AAA Metroidvania, and got pretty close to that line, play Prince of Persia: Lost Crown. There's a lot to love there. There really is. I will say though, the other thing is that I don't remember if I was talking about this shit last week or not, but there's a feature in there that I very much remember everybody going, oh my god, every game in the genre should do this from now on. And I'm like, I don't know why, because I haven't used it once. And that's the screenshot on the map thing. I'm like, I get it, it's a neat idea in theory, but I just don't care. Like, I'm the person, I won't, like Dread and Samus Returns, all had map markers. I don't fucking use them for anything, ever. Not once did I ever mark the map. I'm just like, it kind of takes the fucking joy out of it for me. Like, part of the challenge for me is making the mental note and having the recall to know where you're going. And if you want that kind of thing, then bust out the pen and paper. Like, there's, I don't know if it's a nostalgic magic or if it's just the joy magic, but there's something to be said for that I can't let go of. That makes me unable to bring myself to use map markers in games like this, even though map markers have basically become a genre staple. So take that for what you will. Now, if you want a game that'll really push you in that further that direction, even Carrion, because Carrion's a full-blown Metroidvania with no map. Because you play as the monster can't fucking read a map. The monster just goes and does monster shit. And I really kind of liked that a lot. It made me happy because it's sitting there challenging my brain to see how much information I can simultaneously hold, retain, and use and recall. And that's part of what I'm realizing is the joy in this genre for me, is it teases and challenges me mentally to try and keep myself sharp in that capacity.
Sure.
So there's a whole fucking tangent that I didn't plan on going on, but it's there now, so fuck it. But yeah, that's what's there. So let's head towards the break, but we're not there yet. Because before we get there, we got to take a minute and talk about our awesome sponsor, Imaginary Authors, helping you up your scent game with fragrances for guys, gals, and non-binary pals. And not just perfumes, colognes, but also the perfumed oils, the candles, the bar soaps, all of it fantastic. I will tell you from personal experience, the candles, I hate getting like a scented candle and going, this smells really fucking good, let's go home, light this bitch up. And you do, and none of the smell fucking comes into the room. The candle smells, but it doesn't come out. And the candles that I've gotten from Imaginary Authors will absolutely bring that wonderful scent into the room. And just, it's never too much, but it's always just the right amount, so that you're not like, I'm getting hint of or no. You get the full fragrance at the correct I don't know, smell volume. Can we call it smell volume? I'm calling it smell volume. That's the thing now. What's the smell volume of this candle? And every candle should have a smell volume rating on it. From now on, I'm demanding it. This should be the industry fucking gold standard. Smell volume, awesome. But yeah, go check them out. Tons of great stuff. Personal favorites, Language of Glaciers, City on Fire, Memoirs of a Trespasser, all just fantastic. And if you can't decide, put your own little sample pack together and try out a bunch and find a new one to love. Go check them out. Link in the show notes down below. That's Imaginary Authors. So all that out of the way, let's head towards the break, and then right after the break we're going to be back in the third half of the show, and we're going to be talking about the Game Awards right after the break. And we're back with the third half of the show. This week we are taking a dive down the warp pipe.
Oh wow, love these pipes.
And we're asking the question, have the Game Awards lost their magic, lost their way? And if so, how do we fix it? How do they fix it? How should it be fixed? What should it be? So let's dive in.
I will need, just really quickly, because I am a newbie game person. I haven't really gotten into, not that I didn't play games, but I haven't been as into video games as I am now until I met my husband, which was 4 years ago. How long have the Game Awards been a thing?
That
What are we on, 10 years
depends
now?
on how you define the Game
I'm
Awards.
talking specifically the Jeff Keighley Game Awards.
Okay, because
I was going to say, rough history here. A long time ago, an extra long time ago in internet time, there used to be a thing on Spike TV called the VGAs. That was the Video Game Awards. And
I remember those.
and they were terrible. It was fucking awful. It was appalling to watch. And then Jeff Keighley came along and pulled his connections and his clout and said, I'm going to make the Game Awards, and we're going to make it this big prestigious thing instead of this ridiculous offshoot of The Man Show. And it started well enough. I mean, it really did. And it seems to have floundered in the last several years.
Okay, but that doesn't tell me when they started. Because right
Like I
now,
said-
I've got maybe three of the past years in the game.
I want to
that's
say
my
Keighley's
reference.
Game Awards has been running for about 10 years now.
Okay, see, that's what I need to know, because like I said, I've only got I think I've seen 2 or 3 Game Awards.
So
And
It's like
I know
8 to
definitely
10
this-
years.
I know this year, last year, and I'm iffy on the year before that, but there might not have been one, because at that point, COVID was still a thing.
No, there was. It was just kind of a stage show presentation thing. Yeah.
I think we did watch that one then, because
We
there was
did.
no one in the audience, correct?
Correct.
So
Okay,
the very
we did watch.
the very first Jeff Keighley Game Awards was, I looked it up, December of 2014, so almost 10 years now.
So this year
Okay,
will be
so-
10 years.
Yes.
Just so, for reference, Zoe's reference point is only the last 3 years. So when we talk about that, I thought
I
I
think
would have
4,
it-
actually.
I don't think we watched them the first year we were together.
I think we did. I've never missed them.
If we did at that point, I was not enough invested to hold
No,
that in-
something happened that year. You got a call and had to dip out of the room.
Whatever that call was, we'll talk about it later. I don't even remember what that call was.
That's okay. I just remember that that's what happened.
Okay. So, yes, still, 3 years. So I'm coming in it, with how it is now.
Mm-hmm.
So that I'm just letting listeners, viewers, however you are engaging with this podcast, that is my perspective with this entire thing. Someone who's coming into it recently.
So I'm going to open with a thought here, because some of my thoughts on this connect to a couple of things outside of the Game Awards. And I know that one of the big things that everybody looks forward to in the Game Awards are the announcements and the trailers and the reveals. Here's kind of where I'm at. The Game Awards have become less about the actual prestige of the award and the people and the games that are winning the awards, the teams, the people that worked on these, and it's the real hype seems to be around what are we going to see? What are we going to find out about for the first time? What are we going to get news on? What's going to be shown? And especially over the last few years, starting with 2020 because of COVID, and how that ended up impacting E3, came the birth of Summer Game Fest, which had its own weird kind of rocky start because E3 was kind of on again, off again, off again, on again shit until, this year where they finally said, yeah, it's dead. We're leaving it buried. And because the Game Awards is also one of Keighley's pet projects that was designed and crafted to be there in place of a missing E3, I feel like that the Game Awards really needs to back off being about the reveals and the world premieres and really dial in on the actual awards ceremony and about the recognition that's being given to the people, the talent, the games, the art, and less about the looking for breaking news about what's coming, what's being revealed or previewed or updated or anything like that. Like, a couple of those sprinkled in is one thing, but it's gotten to a point where that's at least half the fucking show now. And I'm like, you've got Summer Games Fest. Put it there. And from there, if you want, you can break off and do, you know, a Winter Game Fest that's maybe a scaled back version. Take all the stuff that you were, or the majority of the stuff that you were going to pour into the Game Awards in terms of trailers and reveals and such, put that in its own show, wrangle up some more stuff, you know, for the winter one, and let the awards be about the awards. Maybe another performance or two in there. Honestly, my favorite performance every year is honestly the Game Awards orchestra doing the big, you know, Game of the Year medley before the announcing the winner. I love that shit. Like, that's fucking cool as hell to me. Do a little more of that. But dial it in and focus it, because right now it feels like it's missing the fucking point, and it's all about the sponsors and how many ads we can cram in and everything. And I'm like, I get it, you got to pay the fucking bills, but let's maybe be a little more tasteful about it.
Right.
So, as someone, like I said, as someone looking at it from the the outside with no skin in the game, I do agree with that. For something labeled the Game Awards, the fact that them just like listing and then going, well, these people won, and then listing blah 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 blah, this person won for this like, it seems weird that those are done so quickly when you look at something like the Oscars or the Grammys. You know, the whole purpose is to give the award. That's the show, you know, and to have those people come up and talk about, you know, the fact that they won this award. Now, a couple of those categories going like that, like, I can kind of understand that. I don't need that for, you know, every single category, because like there are awards like that in other award shows where they're like, here's the category, here's the people, here's who won. But, you know, and I get that some of the bigger ones do get a bit of a spotlight, but I do agree that they spend, like, I'm not gonna lie, I watch the Game Awards just to see the releases. That is the entire reason I watch the show. I always have a good idea of what the Game of the Year is going to be, mostly because they're also always in most of the categories as well, you know? And I feel like, and this just could be me, but having, you know, the same 3 games in almost every damn category, I'm like, this doesn't give anyone else a real shot at winning some of these other awards. You know, I feel like if you're in the running for Game of the Year, you know, because in my head, Game of the Year encompasses a lot of those smaller categories. That means you had a boss-ass, like, art direction, voice acting, gameplay, music. I feel like when you're getting that label, your game as a whole was just awesome. Now, do I think, you know, these games maybe could excel at one specific area over the others? Yes, but I feel like there should be a limit on how many other categories, specifically those nominated for Game of the Year, are allowed to have. Because it sucks to watch the awards and, like, I can list the games that are going to be in that category because it's the same, you know, like, don't get me wrong, I loved Breath of the Wild. and God of War was a magnificently done game. I hadn't played it, mostly because I didn't have the system at the time. I still don't think I have the correct system for that. But
Yes,
that's
you
neither.
do.
We do? Okay. I wasn't sure. Anyways, but knowing that when they listed it, I was like, yeah, no, it's going to be this and this and this, and I'm just like, there's nothing new here. There's, I kind of like the awards because, let's say something wins a category and I'm like, I've never heard of that game. Like, obviously it's pretty awesome if it won this category. And I would like to see more of that and not everything dominated by not just AAA games, but like, your big, like, series games, like, God of War or Legend of Zelda, and just those seemingly dominating everything. But I do agree with you that they should split it. My only question is, what is viewership for the Summerfest versus the Game Awards? Like, is that why they put them there? Because they know more people are going to watch the Game Awards?
Well,
viewership for the other thing increase if they put those in a different area. But Wes, looks like you wanted to say something.
Yeah. So one was a little bit of not a full-on disagreeing, but a counter to limiting how many things a game can be categorized for. Because you got to remember that, like, part of nominating a game for a category, you're not nominating the game specifically. I guess maybe you are technically by name, but it's not the game that's supposed to get the credit. It's the team that worked hard on that part of the game. So by nominating these games for, say, best soundtrack, best art direction, best action adventure game, game of the year, etc., you're saying, okay, the team responsible for the game design part, they did the best here. The team responsible for the music, they did the best here. The team responsible for doing the art did the best here. And by saying that you were nominated for Game of the Year, so the team who did, individual teams don't deserve credit for this one part of your game, that just, I don't know, feels like we're saying that, almost feels like we're limiting how we can praise them. And I just pulled up an example real quick. You mentioned Breath of the Wild. I have it right here. For the Game Awards 2017, Breath of the Wild was nominated for 6 categories, including Game of the Year. So 5 if you don't count Game of the Year. 2, 3, 4. Of those 5 other than Game of the Year, it only won 2 of them. Best Game Direction and Best Action Adventure Game. So even though it was nominated for audio design, score, and art direction, it didn't win those.
I'm surprised it didn't win for the score. I swear to God, so many times I would just put on Breath of the Wild music. I did it in my
I think it's because the score for that game is so minimalist.
Right. Also, Nier Automata won Best Score that year. And, I mean, Square Enix games winning Best Score music, kind of just inevitable at this point, right? Also, Cuphead and Persona 5 were also nominated that year, so I'm just going to say Breath of the Wild it was actually stacked against Breath of the Wild in that category, I would say.
Well, and we had 2 years ago when Dread got nominated for Game of the Year, but was only in one other category.
Right.
So, and that's what I'm saying. I'm not saying that, like, you can't be in any other category. I'm not saying that. My thing is, I guess I would need to know, what are they basing Game of the Year on? Because I'm assuming that's best, like, overall, all of the components, like, put together, you had a great game. Now, like I said, I'm not saying that these particular games can't excel in, like, certain, like, other spots. Like, for me, I like the score for Breath of the Wild, and I understand that they have these parts, but I think my big thing is just, all of these, and I know that they have an indie category, don't get me wrong, I know that they do, but I feel like
2 of them, actually,
those,
at least.
2?
They've got Best Indie and Best Debut Indie.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Which
So,
Cocoon
and
pulled
don't get me-
best debut indie this year, I believe, if I remember right.
And so I'm not saying that they don't include those games. I'm just saying in these categories, I feel like they're almost never considered because these big, these big name games dominate the game. And I feel like it, in my head, does not actively reflect what a lot of people end up playing. Now, it could be because of the group of people that, like, I play games with or talk about games with, which is you guys. But even some of the videos you and I watched, Raw, they were talking about how a lot more people aren't buying into these big, like, AAA games. A lot of people, are, publishing their own stuff or, playing something that's not a big, name game. And I just wish, maybe we don't, take away from the big games, but I wish the little ones got a little more love, considering that seems to be what a lot of people are shifting to, because indie people put a lot into their games in a way that bigger names tend to not. Like, shit, you're talking about a Prince of Persia game that apparently has, like, several lag issues, but there are teams for indie games that will spend 10 years making a game just to make sure that when it's released, you have a quality product. They put their heart into games in a way that bigger companies don't. And so just knowing that that is a lot of what people are playing, but it's these big name games that seem to get the spotlight seems not awesome. I mean, do indie games have their own game awards? I could just be naive and not know that they exist. But,
Not
like,
really.
I know we watch a lot of, like, indie nations, but, like, these games aren't getting the love that they deserve because some of these indie games are just fucking impeccable.
Well, that's why a few months ago I brought up in chat looking at maybe starting the Indie Game Hall of Fame. But kind of to your point, this is where there's a very workable parallel between games and film in terms of award ceremonies, because if you look at film, it's the big budget movies that tend to take home most of the awards as opposed to the indie art house stuff in film. And there's occasionally an exception, but that big budget does afford a bigger, more polished finished product. And so, I'm not begrudging it. It doesn't change what I play. I'm just saying and when you look at in terms of what people are playing, it's not a case of what was the most popular, what sold the best. It's trying to look at it as objectively as possible of what is the best game in this category, period. And so in order to really nail down that objectivity, you have to strip away the popularity contest of what sold the best or what was talked about the most. I mean, think about it. You look at last year's awards. Harry Potter wasn't in there anywhere, not nominated for anything. One of the biggest selling games of the year was nowhere to be found in the awards last year.
I'm not gonna lie, my own personal feelings about that whole situation aside, I was genuinely surprised.
Right.
Considering, obviously, you're making an award for gamers, a decent amount of gamers played this game. I get, maybe as a company, they just didn't want to include it, and they didn't want to deal with whatever backlash may have come from that.
I don't think that had anything to do with it.
I think it was
just outclassed.
Yeah, I was about to say, if you look at how stacked gaming was in general last year, The only category I think it honestly should have even been in the conversation for was best soundtrack. That's it.
I couldn't tell you. I haven't played the game, so I couldn't tell you anything about its gameplay, its direction, or anything.
So,
I saw it more, me personally, as like a PR thing that they might have just stayed away from it, because also, you know, you're talking about like movie awards and shit, and yes, things get nominated, but ultimately it's a group of people that decides who goes up for this, so they pick who wins, and it's just a group of people in a room, and, you know, they get to decide what happens regardless of, you know, kind of, I think of it more as like, you know, how we vote for the president and the electoral college exists. Now, granted, yes, they're supposed to, the only difference is the electoral college is supposed to pick, you know, the popular vote for like their area or whatever.
They're supposed to follow their constituency's direction.
Yes. Whereas in these awards and things like that, there is no one beholden to that. Like, let's say, you know, because I believe they do allow, like, people to vote on things, if I remember correctly. Like, you
They
can go
do.
in
I can
and,
actually speak to how the voting is weighted. I have information on this.
Okay. So how is it weighted? Like, how much weight is put onto what the people want? And then my thing is, and I've done this when I voted for something. I voted for it because I liked it, not necessarily because it deserved to win. I just liked it and I wanted it to win. And so, like, I was a kid and I would vote for people for, like, the Nickelodeon awards and shit, and I would just vote for people I liked. They could have been the worst person in that category. But it doesn't fucking matter. I like them, so I would vote for them.
And that's why the Gen Pop vote does not carry a ton of weight in the selection process. So, and this was something that was addressed, and honestly, it makes sense. I'm not saying it's necessarily the best answer, but the answer that Keeley gave does make sense, because somebody asked him about this last year in the run-up to the Game Awards, and he was doing a live stream AMA, and the reason that it's weighted the way it is, the selection committee is mostly like industry, I don't want to say insiders, but you're getting people from major publications like IGN and Giant Bomb and so on down the line. That's your selection committee for the nominees and then the actual winners, because a lot of it has to do with the fact that you're looking at starting with every game that released from this date to this date over the span of a year.
Really quick, who puts up the nominations for, like, who are the names for these? Is it the selection group? Is it people? Or is there a balance between? Okay.
So, and in order to try and figure that out most objectively, you've got a panel of people that have played objectively more games out of the entire year's releases than anybody else, because it's what they're doing professionally to write about and review for. And so they have the biggest breadth of experience with everything that dropped over the course of a year, to be able to go, this one, this one, this one, and this one, and maybe this one were the best out of everything that I've played. And you got to figure, with probably a handful of exceptions, he's right. They are playing more and finishing more games than your average gamer over the course of a year, because they're not limited by budget constraints, time restraint. Time's still a thing, but you got to figure, doing so is part of their job, and so they get extra time essentially allocated to be able to play through and look at and experience more games than the average person does over the course of a year, especially specifically current stuff that's out. And because that drives what they're doing for work. And so that's where the majority of the weight is, because they have a bigger perspective on the year's releases than most people do. And from there, you know, there is a little bit of weight thrown to the popular vote, but then there's also the gamer's choice, essentially, that says that out of everybody that voted, subtracting the selection committee, this is what won. Because when, you know, a case in point, from exactly what you said, that popular vote is just that. It's a popular vote. It's a popularity contest, and the objectivity tends to go out the window.
But I also think playing games for work puts you in a different mindset than someone enjoying a game. You know,
it's the difference between somebody that likes to go to the movies and a film critic.
Right.
No, and I feel like, yes, that's good, because they can be objective and they're looking at it through this criteria, but it's not going to have the same, that game may not have the same effect on them, or even what the, you know, game creator intended, because I highly doubt many game makers, you know, intend for their work to be, you know, they create it with, I want to please the people that are going to pick my game apart, you know, and pleasing this committee. They're trying to appease us, the average consumer. And so I'm not saying that makes what they're doing wrong, and I understand that there's a difference between me going to eat something and, like, Gordon Ramsay critiquing a fucking dish. Like, I do understand that there's a difference. And I'm not saying that their job is wrong. I'm also just saying, like, there's a different perspective going into a piece of media to tear it apart. Even me doing stuff for, like, my podcast, looking at stuff that, like, you know, and I pick stuff that I enjoy, but let's say I picked a TV show or a movie, going back and watching it for the particular, you know, purpose of picking this apart to use it for a podcast episode is an entirely different way of engaging with a piece of media, and honestly engaging with it in a way that was not intended. That is not the creator's purpose. It's not for it, you know, to appease some committee. I mean, if it does, that's great, but I'm like, you know, this isn't a dog or pony show. Like, you're not cultivating it to, you know, be scored. And so I do like your Indie Hall of Fame idea, because it focuses on that, you know, a more personal perspective. And maybe I just feel like I need a different award show that focuses on that. On a personal perspective.
You want more of a People's Choice Award.
Right.
Yeah. And mostly because, and I think this just might be my cynical view of, you know, capitalism in companies, but I'm like, yes, there's this selection committee and they're supposed to be objective and blah-de-blah-de-blah, but how often do we see that that's not the case? Yes, they're supposed to be objective, but this thing has happened in movie awards where, you know, they push things a certain direction because that's what they were told to do outside, you know? Like, you're supposed to be ethical and going in and being objective. Does that mean that that's what happens? Because my thing is, now it could just be because these are big name games, they have the budget, that they genuinely deserve to be nominated for these categories. Okay? Could totally be a thing, and I'm not saying that these games don't deserve it. Okay, I'm not trying to diss any creators of games. But part of me is slightly skeptical that so many of the nominations for categories happen to be these big name games. You know? Like, fuck, what if the game of the year was a bunch of fucking indie games? I'm not seeing that fucking happening at all. But, you know,
I mean,
what
Baldur's
if
Gate
those
won.
were... No, which I was fucking happy about. And I'm not saying that AAA games aren't good. I have played AAA games. I like it. I enjoy the fuck out of some Halo, and I will play the hell out of it. Okay, I like Gears of War. Like, don't get me wrong, there are a ton, and especially when it comes to Nintendo, I love me some Mario and all that shit. Okay, so I'm not knocking AAA games. They deserve recognition because they do put out some good ass games. I just get skeptical that so many of the categories are dominated by these big games.
I think a lot of it comes down to the fact that having that big money behind it allows them to do more, to do bigger and better.
Right.
And I think that's really the biggest part of it. Which, you know, again, we've at least got now 2 dedicated indie-specific categories. I think there's still room for more, which is, again, part of why I raised the conversation a couple of months ago about, you know, doing the Indie Game Hall of Fame, which is not necessarily, you know, an award show specifically for indie, but it's more of a lifetime Hall of Fame curation of the best of indie across the entire history of the industry. So that's not even the same thing, but it is something that I think is worth exploring. And that could very well lead to its own, you know, take on the, you know, the Indie Game of the Year awards.
Right.
So I'm going to pass things off. Okay, cool. You're speaking. I was like, I'm going to pass things over to Wes. I'm like, he hasn't.
Yeah, I was actually about to say, regarding indie games, I would argue that the Game Awards has gotten a lot better about that than it has been in the past. Especially starting with, I believe it was 2020 that Hades got nominated for Game of the Year, and I want to say it was the first indie game to have gotten that. Or to gotten nominated for that. It didn't win, because Last of Us Part 2 somehow beat it, but I want to say it was the first indie game to have been nominated. Then we saw, moving up all the way to last year, we saw Baldur's Gate 3 win. I believe the year before that, Stray was nominated, and A Plague Tale Requiem was also nominated for Game of the Year. So we're now seeing...
I know Gris didn't go for Game of the Year, but it was on a couple of categories when that game came out.
And didn't it win Games for Impact, I believe?
I believe so.
It won what?
I'm pretty sure it was. That was the one with Bunsen and Beaker.
Yes.
It did who, what now?
I remember.
It won the Games for Impact category at the Game Awards.
Which I am happy to have that category. As someone who's big into mental health, you know.
I'll be curious to see if Hellblade lands in there this year. I'm sure it will.
The first one won Games for Impact the year it released, I remember. So it at the very least deserves a nomination. We're a little early in the year to say it deserves to win, but I feel fairly confident it deserves a nomination at bare minimum.
So, like I said, a lot of this could be, you know, I understand as my personal feelings, combined with a certain lack of knowledge of, like, how the industry works. Like I said, I am a casual gamer, which I'm happy that I felt so dumb that I was like, I don't have a word for what I am. I'm not, like, games, but I'm also not a noob. So, I am a casual gamer, and, you know, so there's some of that in there. And like I said, lack of, you know, industry, and also just a distrust of, like, big major corporation company shit. Because, you know, capitalism. And so those three things combined, but going into, you know, kind of back to your starting point, I do think if this is an award show, it needs to be about the awards. Am I saying don't have a few, like, big releases, no. I'm not saying don't do that. Because, yes, that does help with viewership, having these, like, major releases in there. But the fact that, like you said, it's such a focus, and I even said, I primarily watch the Game Awards for, one, the symphony for the end, because it doesn't matter who the nominations are, it's always beautifully done when they have the orchestra come out. Mm-hmm. And so I watch it for the orchestra to actually figure out who, won Game of the Year, because that does always intrigue me. But because I feel like they speed through so fast some of the other categories, it's not something that's capturing my attention. It's not something that I'm always remembering. I don't even always remember who the nominees were, because they're, not made as big of a deal, even for some categories that I think they should be. Because like I said, there are some categories that get the whole, like, come up here on stage, and the one dude that year that went, like, too long, and they had to be like, hey, move.
Oh, yeah.
I forgot what
That's the guy that voiced Kratos in Ragnarok.
Christopher Judge.
A voice acting thing?
Yeah.
And so I'm like, but I think some of these, like, there should be more emphasis on these, on the awards. They're a big deal. These people deserve recognition. They won something, They weren't just a participant. They won. And like you said, they won out of all of the games that were released for an entire year. Your game won. And if we're including all games, indie all the way to, like, big AAA games, we're including that. That is so many games in a year. So many. And so, like, fuck, they look at mobile games too. So I'm like, they look at games, and for you to have one is a big goddamn deal. Like, it's not a small feat. Same with, like, the movie awards. There are so many movies put out in a year. Mm-hmm. Not as much as games, because, they don't include, indie-made films or anything most of the time. I don't know if... I haven't watched a movie award in forever. I don't know. Maybe they have an indie movie category. I don't know. But...
We should ask Noose. He'll know.
Let's see. I know... It's actually... Granted, I don't know if... how often it is for a proper indie award to actually win an Oscar is, or indie movie to win an Oscar is, but before I started getting a little more into movies than I am now, I always considered, like, quote-unquote snobbish films to be the ones that would win. So these would be ones that usually have smaller budgets and aren't ones that are the big names people know won. So I thought it was like a bit of an outlier when Oppenheimer won Best Picture, because that was a big budget, big name movie. Because remember all the Barbenheimer memes. I always thought that wasn't quite an art house movie. So I was a little surprised that was the one that ended up getting Best Picture that year. And a lot of the other ones, I'm looking at the ones that won. The year before, Everything Everywhere All at Once. I love that movie. That's actually my favorite movie of all time. And
a choice film.
Going back to all the movies that won before that, legitimately, before all the ones that won, not necessarily the nominees, but the ones that actually won, I didn't hear of most of these before they announced who the nominees were.
Mm-hmm. Well, and I know, at least in terms of film, there's a whole fucking machination in terms of getting films looked at for nomination by the assorted committees for, like, the Oscars and the Academy and everything else. Like there are whole fucking campaigns that these studios put on for that.
Right. I think another thing is because
and that's
the
something
Oscars
that we don't see in the game industry, and I'm honestly kind of glad it takes some of the bullshit out.
Another thing is the Oscars have a rule that your movie must have been shown in theaters, which is almost impossible without a major distributor. So a lot of times what you'll do is you'll see indie companies make deals with big names like Sony, Warner Brothers, etc., and they'll get all the distribution rights so that they can put the movie in theaters, versus the Game Awards, I'm assuming, have nothing similar to that other than, like, I don't know, your game had to have been on Steam or something, or Steam or Switch, or available on one of the major stores, which is a significantly smaller hurdle. Because I know Steam,
as far as I know,
believe
the only prerequisite is that it released within the calendar time frame.
Right. Because I know at the very least Steam has a very small hurdle to entry. It's $100 to get your game on Steam, and when your game reaches $1,000 in revenue, that $100 is refunded. So
That's what's up.
I don't know about Xbox, PlayStation, and Switch. I imagine it's harder to get on those in general.
Drastically. There's a lot more rigmarole. And then, you've got other platforms too, like getting listed on the Play Store or the Apple App Store, or, now we've got some of the indie-centric boutique systems and platforms like the Playdate.
So,
and we've got big indie creators putting stuff out exclusively on the Playdate now.
So, I know it's really, really popular to shit on the Game Awards, and I think they are far, far from perfect. But one thing I actually hold my opinion on when it comes to their history, looking all the way back to the Spike Video Game Awards to now, my problem with the Game Awards is not that they're getting worse. It's that they're not getting better fast enough, if that makes sense. Because it
needs some refinement.
I think if you look at the Game Awards now versus even if you look at when Jeff Keighley started in 2014, I honestly think if you look at it from an objective lens, they have improved. And over 10 years, the difference might look drastic. But over, say, last year to this year, it certainly won't. And
it's a very slow crawl.
Right. And I do think it's been making steady improvement. And if you want, I believe people are right to call out that it's not been fast enough. But I think I do not agree at all with saying the Game Awards has lost its way. I think it never had its way, but it's going in the right direction, albeit with an out-of-date GPS.
I think for me the biggest thing at this point is the COVID changed a lot by introducing Summer Games Fest as, another Keighley project, and with the advent of that, or the introduction of Summer Games Fest, I think the whole reveal thing aspect of the Game Awards should have been scaled back and should have started honing in more on the actual awards side of things.
Part of me wonders if Keighley kind of wants to wait till Summer Games Fest gets a little bigger before we do that. Because he's only had, 4 or 5 years, I believe, for Summer Games Fest versus the 10.
4 now.
4 now. So 4 years versus
2020
10
was
years.
The first one.
So,
right.
Even with a big name like Jeff Keighley, it's going to take time for that to build up.
Well, I think here might be a good place to wrap this up. Any final thoughts? Do we want to go around real quick, or did we get it all out? We went solidly longer than we usually do on these.
Yeah. I'll end on a positive note. I think it'll get there. I actually do. I just don't... it's not there yet, but I do think it'll get there.
Sure.
I mean, it's not bad enough that I won't watch it again this year, so, there's something. I don't dislike the Game Awards, I just think they could be better.
Mm-hmm. No, I'm with you. Like, don't get me wrong, I tune in to see what they're going to pull the curtain back on, what's getting revealed as much as the awards themselves. I think that I would reshuffle some of if they're going to keep it the way they are, which they probably are, because who the fuck listens to us? But despite the fact they should, they do a good handful of the awards in the pre-show. I really think that they should start shuffling around the ones that are in the pre-show. I'm sorry, I don't need Content Creator of the Year and Best Esports Player and Best Esports Team and Best Esports Manager in the main show, when I could be getting more prominent industry-focused awards as part of the presentation instead of, yep, you won, here's your award, take 2 minutes and get the fuck out of here. Just that we're displacing the art and the artists for the second-hand artists, and that somehow doesn't sit right with me. That's a big one that bugs me. But other than that, like I said, let's do Winter Games Fest. Pull back the world premieres out of the Game Awards and give the awards a little more prestige and a little more breathing room. But that's it. That's all I got. So, wrap it up. I want to say thank you to everybody that tuned in and listened this week. If you've got us going in your ear right now, that's you. Thank you to Zoe and Wes for coming and hanging out with me this week and having this conversation. Thank you to our awesome sponsor, Imaginary Authors. Make sure you check them out. Link in the show notes. Hit that link, jump into the Discord. Tell us what you would change about the Game Awards. We want to hear your thoughts, your feedbacks. So come join the conversation in our Discord. And make sure you subscribe so that way you get us in your feed every week for free, for an extra dose of awesome to make your week just a little bit better. Or at least it'll suck a little bit less. So, all that said, you've been listening to the World 1-1 podcast, powered by the World 1-1 Podcast Network. Press start to engage your mind. Say goodnight, everybody!
Good night, everybody!
Peace!